Numerical investigation of ecohydraulics flow, a case study of a nature-like fish pass. Hello, I am Gorazd Novak, and I would like to present a work co-authored by José Dominguez, Angelo Tafuni, Ana Silva, Polona Pengal, Matthias Cetina, and Dusan Jagar. We used duals physics to investigate a nature-like fish pass. Our interdisciplinary collaboration gave results that should prove useful in various ecohydraulics applications. Contents. This presentation focuses on the numerical modeling aspects of the study. A short introduction, including the presentation of the actual site, is followed by a section describing the numerical model and especially the new features that were implemented into duals physics during the investigation. Then there is a section on model validation, followed by a short overview of the main results. Finally, conclusions and ideas for further work are presented. This photo shows the barrier that should be replaced with a fish pass. Barriers and fish passes. Worldwide, the overwhelming number of barriers that interrupt fluvial systems has been identified as the major cause of the reported staggering declines of migratory fish. A potential mitigation measure could be fish passes, especially close to nature types, which provide diverse flow conditions in terms of depths and velocities, and thus mimic the natural conditions of rivers. This study focused on the characterization of the flow pattern in a fish pass to be implemented in the stream Roughness in Slovenia. At the site, a 1.3 meter high step could be replaced with a series of 10 meter long sections that mimic the natural channel. Photos show the present state at low flow conditions. On the left is the barrier that should be replaced with a fish pass. The other two photos show the natural conditions that we want to reproduce in a fish pass: the meandering section and the rapids. Numerical model. The study was carried out by using duals physics version 5, improved with some new features as described later. A 3D model was applied to model a 10 meter long and 4 meter wide turbulent open channel flow representing a section of the fish pass. Short additional sections were included to simulate upstream and downstream conditions. The geometry of the model included a straight rectangular channel with various spheres and cylinders to mimic boulders and stones. The position of these elements was selected to create areas of different hydraulic characteristics suitable for fish swimming and resting. A 1.5% slope was modeled using a horizontal channel and tilted gravity vector. Open boundary conditions were employed, imposing a constant inlet and outlet velocity of 0.5 meters per second and constant depths, while density was extrapolated from ghost nodes. The initial interparticle distance of 1.5 centimeters was selected. Simulations covered 50 seconds of physical time and were performed using a GPU. Numerical model, new features. This research used the last improvements included in duals physics 5, released in July 2020, such as the modified dynamic boundary conditions described by English et al. And the new density diffusion term described by Fortakas et al. However, the use of modified dynamic boundary conditions for the simulation of the complex geometries required for this work promoted significant advances in pre-processing and post-processing, such as randomly generated bed roughness elements, clipping functions to manage complex geometries, turbulent kinetic energy calculation, particle trajectories calculation, and new output files for easy use in MATLAB. Most of them are already included in the latest update of the duals physics package. The main features are briefly described in the following slides. The use of Modified dynamic boundary conditions described by English et al. Alleviates two drawbacks: large repulsion force generated by the boundary particles leading to a gap between fluid and boundary, and the unphysical values of pressure computed for those boundary particles. The modified approach uses a technique based on a corrected SPH interpolation of physical quantities in the fluid region. In our case, modified dynamic boundary conditions are necessary due to a complex geometry, where even relatively small changes can affect the flow pattern quite significantly. Bed roughness elements. In hydraulic modeling, a very important role is played by the roughness of solid surfaces. The new preprocessing features allow the generation of roughness elements that are distributed randomly over their selected surface, which allows modeling of channel bed roughness without the use of roughness coefficients. In our model, a total of 3,000 small spheres were used to model the bed roughness of pebbles. This figure shows the geometry with various elements, bed roughness, and additional smooth sections. Turbulent kinetic energy. A common way of describing turbulence characteristics of an open channel flow is the turbulent kinetic energy per unit mass, calculated from velocity fluctuations u, v, and w as shown in this equation. The improved measure tool now allows the calculation of TKE. Let's point out, however, that TKE comes from a statistical consideration of turbulence, which inherently requires larger sets of data for the velocity fluctuations to be calculated properly. This means longer measurements or simulations. In our case, TKE was calculated for simulations representing 50 seconds of physical time. Also, note that TKE is just one of the ways to describe flow characteristics, and that it is by no means a detailed description of the turbulence. Validation. Our model was successfully validated against the experimental data by Kupferschmidt and Zhu, who used physical models of pool and weir fishways. We focused on experimental water surface profiles and flow velocities at a given plane for two configurations, as shown in these two plan views. Validation. Water surface profile. Numerical reproduction of the mentioned physical model resulted in a very good agreement of water surface elevation, as shown in these longitudinal profiles of the observed section. Validation. Velocities at z equals 8 cm plane. The agreement of velocities was satisfactory. Note that the left figure and the corresponding legend are copied from the reference paper, and that visualization of model results on the right is made by applying approximately the same color scheme. Despite certain discrepancies, the overall picture is similar enough, especially because we are looking only at the selected slice of the selected observation area. Let's make an overview of the main results. Several preliminary cases and numerous variants were simulated, ranging from uniform patterns to complex geometries. Only some main results are presented here. This figure shows the velocity magnitude of fluid particles at the end of simulation. Results. Vectors of velocity fields. A very useful visualization tool is the option to present vectors of velocity fields. Drawn in MATLAB, the figures of velocity magnitude vectors at selected planes provide valuable insight into the complexity of the flow. This figure shows velocities at the mid-depth plane. You can see various flow paths and areas of different velocities, including the resting zones and areas of backflow, providing a very favorable diversity of flow. Results: area velocity ratio. Another useful tool allows the presentation of the ratio between the flow cross-section area and the velocities at that location. Drawn in MATLAB, these figures show how much of the cross-section area is occupied by a certain fluid velocity. This tool should be useful in various ecohydraulics applications, for example in studies of riverbed erosion. These two figures show conditions at the start and the end of the simulation. You can see how the uniform initial velocities of 0.5 meter per second change into a diverse flow. Most velocities along the length of the model are below 1 meter per second, which was our goal. To conclude, we made a 3D model of an open-channel turbulent flow with very complex geometry and successfully validated it against physical models. Dual's physics proved to be a very valuable tool, especially with the implementation of several new features. Ideas for further work include the following. Firstly, a study on the effect of roughness elements would be beneficial for the calibration of future models. Secondly, the present work could lead to even more complex ecohydraulic simulations, including erosion of mobile beds. And thirdly, the present simulations should be repeated with the application of a turbulence model.